Scroll disclaimer: this story is a work of emotional fiction based on the complex realities of human relationships. While inspired by true-to-life situations, all characters, places, and events are purely fictional and do not represent real individuals. The story includes mature themes such as emotional betrayal, marital challenges, and infidelity, and is intended for an adult audience. Reader discretion is advised. It was an ordinary Saturday morning, or so I thought. The kind of day that starts slow, filled with the smell of fresh coffee and the sound of your husband typing away in the home office. I wore my favorite pale blue skirt, not because of anyone special, but because it made me feel alive. Feminine. Seen. I had a brunch to attend, my sister-in-law's birthday. James, my husband, was too busy to join. He barely looked up from his laptop as I left. "Have fun," he mumbled. No kiss. No glance. Just routine. Outside, Charleston's breeze was playful. As I stepped out of the cafe after brunch, laughing with old friends, the wind swept fiercely under my skirt. I gasped, holding it down, blushing as a few heads turned. But only one pair of eyes froze me in place. Jeremy. Leaning casually against his car across the street, coffee in hand, sunglasses pushed up on his forehead, staring straight at me. Not blinking. Not smiling. Just watching. We hadn't spoken properly in years. He was James's best friend since high school, practically family. But in that single moment, the way he looked at me wasn't friendly. It wasn't innocent. It was the kind of look a man gives a woman when he's imagining things he shouldn't. And instead of being angry, I felt something else. Warmth. A flutter. A reaction I hadn't felt in a long time, not even from my husband. I quickly turned away, heart pounding, cheeks hot. My friends hadn't noticed, still giggling about mimosas and birthday wishes. But I had noticed. Jeremy had noticed. And something unspoken passed between us in that fraction of a second. Later, as I sat in my car, hands shaking on the steering wheel, I questioned everything. Was I overthinking? Was I craving attention? Or had that one look stirred something I had been suppressing for years? Back home, James didn't ask about brunch. He was on a conference call. I stared at him, my husband of 8 years, and realized I couldn't even remember the last time he truly looked at me. But Jeremy had. And it wasn't just a glance. It was a spark. A signal. A question. And, maybe, deep down, I was already answering it. The next few days passed in a haze, but Jeremy's gaze haunted me like a whisper I couldn't shut out. I tried to push it aside, bury it beneath laundry, grocery lists, and dinner plans. But in quiet moments, it crept back, his eyes, the electricity, the strange warmth in my chest that both scared me and pulled me in. James remained the same. Distant. Predictable. We hadn't touched each other with any real affection in months. We were polite roommates more than passionate partners. I used to blame the stress of his work. The long hours. The pressure. But now I was beginning to see it differently. It wasn't that he was busy, it was that I had become invisible. By midweek, I received a text from an unknown number. Didn't mean to stare the other day. "You just looked happy. It was nice to see." Jay. My heart skipped. I stared at the screen, rereading it over and over. He had never messaged me before. Ever. I should have ignored it. I should have deleted it. But instead, my fingers typed back before my brain could intervene. Did I? I honestly don't remember the last time I felt that way. 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then returned. Maybe you should feel that way more often. I could have ended it there. But I didn't. The next morning, as I went for a walk through the neighborhood park, I saw him again. Sitting on a bench like he was waiting for something or someone. As I passed, he stood. Our eyes met again. Not accidental. Intentional. "Hey," he said, voice smooth and steady. "Didn't expect to see you here." I raised an eyebrow. "Didn't expect a text from you either." He smiled slowly, no apology in his eyes. "I just said what I felt. You looked beautiful." And sad. That last word hit hard. I swallowed. "You shouldn't say things like that." "Why not?" he asked, stepping a little closer. "Is it wrong if it's true?" My breath caught. It wasn't just what he said, it was how he looked at me. Like I mattered. Like he saw me. Something James hadn't done in so long I forgot how it felt. I told myself I wouldn't see him again. I told myself this was a dangerous line. But as I walked home, heart racing, I knew something had already shifted inside me. This wasn't just about attraction. It was about being noticed, being wanted, being remembered. And when I got home, James didn't even look up from his screen. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept tossing and turning, haunted by Jeremy's words, "You looked beautiful." And sad. It wasn't just flattery, it felt like someone had finally read the part of me even I had stopped paying attention to. James was next to me, already asleep. His face turned away, one hand resting on his phone. I watched him for a long time. He used to whisper, "I love you," at night. Now we went to bed in silence. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, my thumb hovering over Jeremy's message thread. I knew what I was doing was wrong, but in that moment, it didn't feel wrong. It felt inevitable. "I saw you in the park today. Did you wait for me?" 3 dots appeared instantly. I did. I was hoping you'd stop. I hesitated before typing again. Maybe next time I will. What was I doing? I told myself it was harmless. Just words. Just a conversation with someone who made me feel alive again. But a part of me knew I was already stepping over a line I wouldn't be able to return from. The next morning, I dressed with more thought. A little lipstick. Hair brushed out with care. It wasn't for James. And I hated admitting that. Jeremy texted again around noon. "Coffee?" Just one word. But it wasn't just coffee. We both knew it. I didn't respond right away. I stared at the screen for 15 minutes, pacing the living room. James was working from the home office again, his door slightly ajar. I watched him for a moment. He hadn't even noticed I was in the room. "Where?" I finally typed. "The little spot on Maple and 6th. I'll be there in 20. I sat down on the couch, legs trembling, adrenaline humming beneath my skin. This wasn't like me. I had never cheated. Never even thought about it. I had fought for this marriage during every fight, every cold spell. But something inside me had begun to crack, and Jeremy had slipped through. I told myself I wouldn't let anything happen. It was just a coffee. Just a talk. Just a moment away from the silence of my marriage. But I knew the truth. I wasn't going for the coffee. I was going for the way he looked at me. The way he saw me. The way I wanted to be seen. I arrived at the cafe before Jeremy. My heart thudded in my chest like a warning drum. The wind outside rustled the trees just enough to feel familiar, like the breeze that started all of this. That tiny moment of vulnerability had somehow spiraled into this dangerous curiosity. I chose a seat near the window. Not too hidden, not too exposed. A place where I could make a quick exit if needed. The smell of espresso and vanilla beans filled the air, calming and warm. Still, I felt anything but calm. Then he walked in. Jeremy scanned the room and spotted me instantly. He smiled, but not in a smug way. It was the kind of smile that felt like a secret. Like we already shared something no one else could see. He sat down across from me without saying a word at first. Just looked at me softly, knowingly. My throat tightened. "Thanks for coming," he said. "I almost didn't," I replied, stirring my coffee even though I hadn't added sugar. "But you did." That quiet confidence in his voice made me shiver. He wasn't arrogant, just honest. He knew exactly what this was. We talked. At first, it was simple. Work, mutual friends, his recent trip to Arizona. But the small talk didn't last. "I don't want to make things messy for you," he said finally, his voice low. "But I need you to know. I've been thinking about you for a long time." My hand froze mid-stir. I looked up at him, trying to keep my breath even. "Jeremy, I know he's my friend," he continued. "I know it's wrong. But sometimes, we pretend things are fine when they're not. And sometimes, we pretend not to notice someone just to stay loyal to the wrong life." His words hit something raw inside me. "I'm not asking you to leave, James. I'm not even asking for anything. I just want you to know you're not invisible. You're not crazy. And you deserve more than this ghost of a marriage." I felt my eyes sting. I hadn't cried in front of anyone in a long time. I hadn't let anyone get close enough. He reached across the table and gently touched my fingers, just briefly. That single touch set off a ripple inside me. I should go, I whispered. I understand. But I didn't stand up. Not right away. Instead, we sat there in that silence, our hands barely touching, our hearts wide open, trembling in the weight of everything unsaid. When I finally left, I didn't look back. But I knew he was watching. And this time, I wanted him to. The days after the cafe felt like walking a tightrope between two worlds, one where I was the devoted wife, and the other where I was a woman rediscovering what it felt like to be seen, desired, and alive. James didn't notice the change. Not the new perfume. Not the longer showers. Not even the way I'd pause sometimes, staring out the window as if searching for a version of myself I'd left behind. Jeremy and I didn't speak again right away. No texts. No accidental meetings. But his words lived in my head like an echo. You're not invisible. You deserve more. And the truth was I did. At least that's what I told myself when I reread our message thread late at night, lit only by the glow of my phone screen. One evening, as James sat on the couch, watching reruns and scrolling through emails, I sat next to him, close enough to feel the warmth of his body, yet miles away emotionally. Do you ever miss us? I asked quietly. He looked at me confused. What do you mean? I mean, the way we used to talk. Touch. Laugh. Do you miss that? He blinked, clearly caught off guard. Things change. We're older. Life's busy. You know that. Right, I nodded, but my chest ached. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't fight. I simply accepted the silence between us like a second skin. Until Jeremy's name lit up my screen again. I've been trying to stay away, but I can't stop thinking about you. I stared at the message, pulse quickening. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I can't stop either. I hit send before I could stop myself. And, just like that, something inside me cracked open for good. The next message came a minute later. Come see me. Just for a drive. No expectations. I didn't answer right away. I looked over at James, still glued to the TV, laughing at something I didn't find funny. And then, I stood up. I slipped on my jacket. Grabbed my keys. My hands trembled, not from fear, but anticipation. Hunger. That guilt-deep kind of hunger that grows when your heart has gone cold for too long. I didn't tell James where I was going. He didn't ask. Jeremy was parked 2 blocks away, headlights off, waiting. When I slid into the passenger seat, neither of us spoke. He simply looked at me, eyes filled with something raw and real. Then he started driving slowly, wordlessly, through quiet streets that seemed to hold their breath with us. I told myself again, just a drive. Just a moment. But deep down, I knew better. Some doors, once opened, don't close again. The car ride was silent at first, except for the sound of tires humming against the pavement and the occasional creak of leather as I shifted nervously in the passenger seat. Jeremy didn't press me with questions. He didn't reach for my hand. He just drove, as if letting the distance carry our decisions for us. He took the long way through the edge of town, where the houses grew farther apart and the streetlights thinned into stars. I opened the window slightly, letting the wind touch my face. The same wind that had lifted my skirt that day, the beginning of all of this. After a few minutes, Jeremy spoke. I don't want to be a mistake for you. I looked at him. His profile was tense, jaw clenched, eyes focused on the road, but there was vulnerability there too. Then don't be, I whispered. He pulled into a small overlook on the edge of a wooded park, where the city lights blinked below us like fireflies. He turned off the engine. Everything fell into stillness. I shouldn't be here, I said, barely able to meet his gaze. But you are, he replied softly, turning toward me. And so am I. So, what does that tell you? I didn't answer. My heart was too loud. He leaned forward slowly, giving me every chance to stop him. My breath caught in my throat. But I didn't pull away. Our lips met in the softest, most cautious kiss I'd ever felt. Like two people testing the edge of a cliff before leaping. But once our mouths touched, something broke open. The kiss deepened, filled with everything we hadn't said, the aching, the guilt, the need. It wasn't just desire, it was a crash of loneliness meeting understanding. When we finally pulled apart, I was breathless. Not just from the kiss, but from the weight of what I had just allowed. I don't know what this means, I whispered. It doesn't have to mean anything yet, he said. But don't lie to yourself and pretend it doesn't feel like something. I looked out the window. The stars looked farther away now. Or maybe I just felt closer to something I wasn't ready to name. I should go home, I said. I know. But neither of us moved. And when he drove me back, we didn't speak. He stopped 2 blocks away again, just like before. I stepped out without looking back. My feet felt heavy as I walked toward the house, every step filled with guilt, and something else I didn't want to admit. When I opened the front door, James was still on the couch, half asleep, the TV flashing across his face. He barely stirred as I walked in. And for the first time in a long time, I realized he wouldn't even think to ask me where I'd been. Because maybe deep down, he already knew. Or maybe he just didn't care. The next morning, I stood in the shower far longer than I needed to. Hot water poured over my skin, but it couldn't wash off what I felt. Not guilt exactly. Not regret either. Just confusion. A deep, soul-rattling uncertainty about where I belong now. I wasn't stupid. I knew what last night meant. It wasn't just a kiss. It was an awakening. A doorway I had willingly stepped through, a choice I couldn't unmake. And yet, my home still looked the same. James still sat at the table scrolling through news on his phone, sipping coffee, mumbling a morning that barely felt human. I watched him for a long moment. I used to love him so fiercely. We used to share everything, our fears, our dreams, late-night laughter. Now, I couldn't remember the last time he looked at me the way Jeremy had. But wasn't I still married? Did a dead marriage still count? As I packed the dishwasher, James finally looked up. You okay? The question stunned me, not because it was tender, but because it was so rare. Like hearing a forgotten song after years of silence. I'm fine, I lied. He nodded and went back to his phone. That's when I knew I wasn't torn between 2 men. I was torn between 2 versions of myself. The woman who stayed loyal out of habit, out of guilt, out of duty, and the woman who longed to be wanted, to be seen, to be touched like she mattered. Later that afternoon, Jeremy texted again. I'm sorry if I crossed a line last night, but I meant every word. I'll back off if that's what you need. Just say it. I stared at the message, my chest tightening. Part of me wanted to tell him to stop, to walk away, to let me figure out my marriage in peace. But another part, the louder part, wanted to see him again. I don't know what I need, I typed. But I don't want you to disappear. He replied instantly. Then I'm here. No pressure. Just here. And somehow, that comforted me more than anything James had said in months. That evening, James and I had dinner in silence again. I watched him across the table. He didn't look up once. Not when I cleared my throat. Not when I asked him how his day was. He mumbled something about a project deadline and returned to his screen. And in that moment, I saw it clearly, not the failure of a marriage built on lies, but one that had slowly bled out through years of indifference. I didn't want to cheat. I didn't want to become someone I'd hate. But I also couldn't keep fading into the background of my own life. And Jeremy, he wasn't just temptation. He was a mirror. A mirror showing me everything I had buried to survive. The sun was setting when I made the decision. Not a loud, cinematic decision. No dramatic music or thunder in the background. Just a quiet knowing in my chest, like a final breath after holding it in for far too long. I couldn't keep living 2 lives. That evening, I asked James if we could talk. He was in his office, headphones on, staring at his screen. When I walked in, he glanced up, annoyed at the interruption. It's important, I said firmly. He took off the headphones. Okay, what's going on? I sat down on the couch, my hands folded tightly in my lap. I'm not happy, James, I said, voice shaking. And I don't think you are either. He blinked, caught off guard. What are you talking about? You haven't touched me in months. We barely speak. I feel like we're strangers sharing a house instead of partners in a life. He looked down, then away. We've just been busy. Life is stressful. Marriage isn't always exciting. You know that. But it's not supposed to feel like nothing either, I said, voice rising. I wake up next to you and feel alone. I walk into a room and you don't even notice. I've tried to bring it up so many times, and you always deflect. There was a long pause. Then, almost defensively, he said, "Are you saying this is all my fault?" "No," I whispered. "I'm saying we both stopped showing up. And now I don't know how to pretend anymore." His jaw clenched. "Is there someone else?" I froze. And then, quietly, yes. His face went pale. The air between us thickened like cement. For a moment, I thought he might yell, throw something. But he didn't. He just sat there, stunned, staring at me like I was a stranger. "Who?" he finally asked. "It doesn't matter," I said. Because it wasn't about him. It was about everything we lost, and how I couldn't keep drowning in silence. Tears welled in my eyes, but I didn't look away. I'm not proud of what I did. But it made me realize I can't live like this anymore. He didn't say anything. Just turned his face toward the window. After a long moment, he muttered, "I guess we've both been gone for a long time." I nodded. Maybe we both just stopped noticing. That night, I slept in the guest room. Not out of punishment or guilt, but clarity. The first real clarity I'd felt in years. Jeremy wasn't my future. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But he was the wake-up call that saved me from forgetting who I was. The wind had lifted my skirt that day, and yes, it had exposed something in me. But it wasn't just vulnerability or temptation. It was truth. The truth that I had been hiding for far too long. And now, I was finally ready to live it. 87.